Hey, Jim, can you hear me?
Hi, Dan.
Hi.
It's
Hey,
Christy.
Christy.
How are ya?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. I'm excited to learn more. I've been reading on the website just now to try to cram before our.
And we have Sue. Hi, Sue. Saw that you can hear too, so great.
I'm going to turn mine on mute because I have the door open to my office and everybody's making a lot of noise, but otherwise I suffocate. So I'll turn my camera on in a minute.
Okay, totally fine. Hi, Tina.
Hi, I just made it. Good, I'm not the last one.
Nope. So we have Allie. So we're waiting for Jeff. And I think we have one more volunteer who's joining us. So let's give it a couple minutes. We definitely need Jeff. We're not going anywhere without Jeff.
Okay. Hi, friends.
Hello.
How's it going?
Hello.
Good. Good. Get school's team.
Yeah.
That's pretty fun. given
Yeah.
that We normally don't really get to work with you so much.
And we've got soil samples. So
Oh, nice. Okay, so we'll be going over that on Monday.
okay.
Today is all about the app.
Oh yeah.
And here's Jeff. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Dan, how's it going?
Good.
Good.
Got the team here.
All right.
So I just want to let you guys know that if we could at the end, let's talk about the schedule for the next, the end of this week and beginning of next, so we're all on the same page. Hey, Brittany. So let's get started. I did get the recording figured out, so we are recording.
Oh, cool.
So I'm scared to hit pause. So for the editors of this, sorry about all the parts that you're going to want to skip through.
So Dan, just a quick suggestion before you hit start, so we don't have to record this part. Whoever is going to be editing it may want to set a stopwatch. So set your phone or something when he hits start. And then every time we come to a section where you're like, we're going to want to cut that. And I'll have lots, I'm sure, that I want to cut or that I'm hoping you'll cut. Just write down the time. It makes it way easier to go then and find those. So just when he hits start, whoever's going to do the editing.
That is a pro idea. Thank you.
And self-interest, because I'm hoping you'll cut out the bad parts.
We'll make you look good, Jeff. Don't worry.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Stephanie.
Yeah.
Hi,
So yeah, just wanted to introduce you all to Jeff. So Jeff works for USDA. He is the principal investigator, or PI. Is that what PI stands for?
And I guess that's what I am. I'm not sure, but anyway, yeah, lead or something.
For LandPKS, he's working all over the world. Hey, Stephanie. And he's also working at CU and New Mexico State. So he gets around without going anywhere. So anyway, most of the crew here, Jeff, is the schools team. So Tina, Haley, Brittany, and Christy, and Kim, who's blacked out, are all on the. They're all educators and awesome communicators. So I think, as I mentioned to you guys during the orientation, think about how you can relate this to folks and what resonates with you. And, as I think what our theme is kind of like, we're gonna take a pause in the soil sampling to learn more about our soil, because, as Jeff pointed out, the first thing to know about your soil is what's the texture, and relative to carbon sequestration, that makes a big difference. You're not going to sequester as much as we talked about with a sandy soil as you are with clay soil. So Jeff, we also have 2 volunteers on the call who are so these are the, we got to get our team names right. So I think that the teacher crew, we'll say, is this crew, the crew that is going out doing the LandPKS. And then the volunteer crew is the crew that's going out and delivering the treatments. So I'll suggest those names so I don't confuse myself. So anyway, so Stephanie and Sue have been volunteers, and they're interested in learning about LandPKS. So here they are.
Thank you, Stephanie. Sue.
So yeah, let's get started. And you want to take over from here, Jeff?
Sure. Yeah. And we can just, I won't share a screen yet, just a quick intro. So I actually grew up in a family of educators. My dad was a middle school English teacher, and then went on to become a middle school guidance counselor. And I always thought, and in fact, I went through quite a bit of counseling in college to decide whether to become a teacher or a researcher, a scientist. In fact, I remember my intro to education professor, I would go into her office literally once every year, sometime around, when it starts getting dark around November, and I'd get sort of depressed and was like, oh, what am I going to do with my life? And I want to make a big impact, and I know the best way to make an impact is to be a teacher. But I love science, and I kind of like research, and so I kind of went back. I ended up in the research realm, but have worked in volunteer positions more, and then work study when I was making my way through college with environmental science education groups ever since I was actually, my first volunteer job was with a metropolitan park in Columbus, Ohio. And so I really value what you guys are doing. And when Dan said that we were actually going to have real teachers involved in this, I got super excited because I think this is this is kind of where we want this all to fit in. We want this not to just be sort of a citizen science program, but a something where we fully engage people, and you've got to understand education to do that. And so that's kind of where we're coming from. I will share my screen now, and I'm just going to show you one slide here, a photo. So LandPKS actually started in Africa. We started developing in Africa because we got the funding from U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. And as part of that, as we were starting to design it, we went around and we talked to various groups. And one of the groups we spoke with was a group of extension workers, teachers in northern Namibia. And this gentleman, when he heard what we were trying to do in terms of understanding your land, understanding what its potential is, he said, what you see on the screen, we need to see beyond what we see, because that can help you decide what to do next. And sort of as we think about LandPKS, what we're really trying to do is provide people with a better understanding of their land, what its potential is, and then what the response is to these different treatments that we're applying. So it's kind of that broader context. And I think for some of the folks that you're going to interact with, that's going to matter to them. And they are going to want to sort of see where this fits into the larger world. And for them, you can send them to the website. And I'm just going to go ahead and whoops, if I can get back to Zoom again. And PKS, Land Potential Knowledge System. Yeah, and if I don't, go ahead and just chime right in. I think we've got a small enough group here. I don't always see the chats when I'm running Zoom sessions. So yeah, Land Potential Knowledge System. So this is the website, landpotential.org. You can click on the data portal, and this, again, it takes a little while to load, but basically what it's doing is it's loading plots from all over the world. And you can look at the public sites. If you click here, you can look at your own sites, which of course they won't have very many, but you can see it's populating. It started in Africa, and then it basically, adoption sort of spread globally around the world. And Boulder is going to become a big part of this, both in terms of the actual sort of information that will be uploaded, but also because, and I'm not sure, Dan, how much you've shared, but what we're essentially doing is testing a model that we think we may be able to scale globally in terms of engaging folks. This was not designed for people to use in their backyards, but it turns out we think it works pretty well there. You guys will be providing that feedback over the course of the summer that will help us decide if in fact that's the case, and if there is a scalable model to use it in backyards. And you can go in and play around with this. As soon as you upload a point, you'll start to see the data there, provided that you maintain public. I'm not sure who went to Greenland. Clearly somebody was just kind of messing around. I don't think we have any ice core data. And so there are obviously some points out here. The ones in Iceland definitely are real. There's a training course there that uses LandPKS, and you can see that most of them, for any of you that know the geography of Iceland, are actually right in and around Reykjavik. Whoops, not in Greenland, but right in here. The other organization I just wanted to briefly introduce you to before we jump into the training is the Asombro Institute. So Asombro is a science education organization based in southern New Mexico that works in the schools. As you can see here, they serve over 20,000 students, and that really does mean direct contact with one of their employees or volunteers, and over 700 teachers per year. And they also have a number of curricula that you can download. And one of those is actually and we're starting to load some more, but there's a LandPKS curriculum for using LandPKS with 5th to 8th grade students. And they've actually piloted this, and it works fairly well. It's a 3-module, about a 3-hour program that just looks at part of the app that you'll be seeing today. And so forth, but some other resources. And I think, again, as we start to connect to some of the climate change and the water cycle and so forth, there may be some other things here. And Asombro does develop all of it to the next gen science standards. And the LandPKS module as well does address those next gen science standards. It's actually led by a individual who got her PhD at Colorado State University, and then decided that made the decision that I was struggling with in college, and decided that she did not want to stay in the research realm and actually wanted to go out and work directly with students, and so that's where she works now. So that's kind of the background and the history. Any questions on sort of where all this came from? I think Dan's hopefully provided a little bit of context on, yeah, I guess, yeah, just now with where we got. No? Okay, great. We'll go ahead and dive into the nuts and bolts. Have you guys downloaded it yet? I should have asked that before. Everybody has it on. Does anybody not have it on their phone?
No, yeah, okay, yeah, on my phone.
It's on your phone. Okay. Has everybody logged in to a Gmail account?
Nope.
No. Okay. So what you want to do is go ahead and we can actually do this together. I'm going to now, you don't have it, Sue. Okay. So Sue, are you able to, and Haley? Yeah. So let's go ahead and just take a 3-minute break. And for those that already have it, you can watch cat videos or I don't know. Whatever you want to do. And for those that don't, go ahead and download it. We might as well just go ahead and for those that already have it, go ahead and log in. So when you open it, it's actually if I log out and I will share my screen. So if I log out, so basically what you're going to see is something like this. You swipe, and when you get to the 4th screen, I guess it is, you just tap the word login and then sign in with Google. And for the training, you can use this today. You can use any Google account that you'd like. I was suggesting, Dan, in that document, and Rosie and Marty and Ali, that it would probably make sense for this group, because you're going to be collecting so many plots, to create a unique Gmail account for this project that you use. And in fact, if you could sort of all, and we can do this at the end of the call, just use whatever Gmail account for now. The reason for that is that the way the app is currently set up, and this is a limitation for something like this and something that we're hoping to change, but programming takes time, so it won't happen in the next few weeks, or even probably by the end of the summer. But right now, all of your data are associated with your Gmail account. Now, as long as you make your data public, and I'll show you how to make sure that that happens, EcoCycle will always be able to access your data through the public website, as will everybody else in the world. Okay? Only your LandPKS data, nothing else, including your email address. But if say, you know, Dan just wanted to grab all the data that you guys have collected, or Marty or Rosie wanted to do that, it would be a lot easier if they could just log into your, not your Gmail account, but that project Gmail account and grab those data. Now in the future, we'll fix this, so it'll be a lot easier, and you'll be able to assign Dan or EcoCycle permission to download, you know, all of your data and basically access it directly. But right now it's a little more complicated. So my suggestion, given the fact that each of you are probably going to end up putting a fair number of plots on your phone, and we'll get into that in a minute. Actually, probably towards the end when we go through that document. It would probably make more sense just to create an extra Gmail account.
One for everyone, or each of us have our own new?
Each of you have your own, and that's also very important, because if you are sharing a Gmail account, you're gonna be, all of the plots will all show up, and if you start editing each other's plots, things get out of sync. It becomes a mess. So we haven't, I mean, this is a limitation of the system. So you guys, again, this is the good thing about a pilot, is you guys are going to be contributing to something that could become much, much, much bigger than it already is, which is global. The bad thing about a pilot is that we're basically trying to get the app to do something that it's not optimized for, which is work with these big groups. It was designed to be used by individuals. Okay.
The schools department has Gmail accounts already. Like I just logged on with mine. Is that,
Yeah.
would that
Right.
work?
And that's fine. And we may just want to stick with here, because switching back and forth between Gmail accounts may end up being more confusing than it's worth. So I really, this is the conversation I was thinking we were going to have yesterday before this call. But you can do it either way. If you go with your own Gmail account, which to be honest will probably be simplest for most of you guys, just make sure that all the plots get marked public. The other reason, though, to use, again, there's pros and cons of everything. The other reason to use a unique Gmail account that you could then hand over to EcoCycle is if you don't work with this program again next year, we're going to somehow have to replicate those plots and put it on somebody else's Gmail account because they're going to be sitting, they're tied to you. So based on all that, now that I've given you the whole complicated story, I think for this group, it would be best if if you were able to create a unique Gmail account for this project for each of you. I think it's just going to make it a lot easier. And then you can just transfer those to next. And hopefully, my hope is that by next year, we will have eliminated this whole problem and we'll be able to basically, Dan, you'll just be able to sit at your computer and say, okay, I want all these public plots. They're all going to be part of this one project and everything will be fine. But just in case, I think it might be good, if you guys don't mind, to develop a Gmail account. I'm going to leave that topic because we don't have to make that decision right now. In fact, we don't even need to make it until you guys head out to the field. So we've got another week to reflect on this, but I just wanted to put it out there now because we are at the login stage. Does everybody now have the app?
It says that username is taken, try another, but it's my Gmail account and I've never had this before.
Okay, that's a Gmail issue. So we don't even touch that part. It's basically just going through. So let me, when you went to the login screen, so let me log out again.
Oh, it says create your Google account. No, that doesn't make sense. Okay, let's see. Oh.
Yeah, it should just, if you just put your Gmail address, do you have a Gmail address you already use on this phone?
Yeah.
Oh, then it should just basically pick it up and ask you for your password or your thumbprint or your iris, whatever you're using, and then go right in. Because we don't even see any of this. All we see is your email address.
When you went to that last page, Tina, and you pushed on that square at the top, did it ask you to put something? Did you do that and that far went? It went that far?
I clicked the create account.
Oh, that's why. Yeah.
Because I thought I was creating an account for the LandPKS.
Right. Okay. This is already good feedback. Okay. I'm not sure that's something we can control, but this kind of feedback, super helpful because I'm sure when you guys go out and work with the farmers, they're going to have the same issues. So the create, let's see, log in or add new account.
So if you have a Gmail account, you just log in, you don't.
We just log in. So we need to expand that to say log in or create a new Gmail account. Or, right? Would that be clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Dan, so this is already an outcome of the project. We improved the app. That's great. That's exactly the kind of thing we need.
Maybe your wording should be log in with existing.
Yeah.
Like
existing or create new Gmail account. Good, even better. And if anybody has any even better, just throw it into the text or the
chat.
chat. Yeah. Good. All right. Is everybody now logged in?
Yes.
Anybody not logged in? Okay, great. All right. So now I need, and you guys should be seeing, no, because I'm not sharing my screen. It would help if I did that. Okay, actually, so what I'm going to do now is just hit a quick pause and do a little bit more background. I just wanted to make sure that we had everybody on, and just a little more background on what this is all about. So, and I'm not going to bore you with 20 PowerPoint slides. I have 9, and actually one of them is the demo, so it'll be pretty quick. Oops. I could learn how to run PowerPoint. Okay. And I just clicked open the wrong one. Let's see. Oh no, this is fine. Okay. Yeah, I just haven't updated the title. This is what it does. And this is really what we're going to be using it for primarily here, is identifying the soils and then collecting soil health and vegetation monitoring data. Now, some of your folks may also want to record management practices. Again, we haven't optimized it for that in people's backyards. And so we're going to have to play around with it a little bit. And you guys will probably have ideas on how to do that. It backs up in the cloud. That's semi-automatic. You just hit synchronize and it goes up. And then there are going to be a couple of things coming online. And one of them, the ones that's kind of cool that your farmers may be interested in, is the Nature Conservancy. We're working with them to provide wildlife habitat information through it, so pollinators and so forth. Why is it called the Land Potential Knowledge System? So land potential is the inherent potential of the land, and this is kind of scientific, but sustainably generate ecosystem services. So basically to support human life on Earth is another way to put it. Based on soils, topography, and climate. Obviously, the potential is going to be very different here in Boulder than it, say, would be in Florida, on a very sandy soil in a humid, much wetter climate. And I was just out on Saturday evening with Boulder's grassland ecologist, some of you probably know, Lynn, and we were out on Shanahan, and she was telling me the Shanahan ecosystem is actually the same plant community and ecosystem as they have in Kansas. But because we get a little bit more moisture here, it's similar soils, we get the same plant communities, which is kind of cool. And that's a great example of land potential and the connections that occur. We can use soil maps, and actually we're accessing soil map data to tell us what the soils might be, but they don't actually tell you what your soils are. Soil maps are actually pretty imprecise. They'll tell you what the soils might be, but to really find out, you've got to dig a hole. And this is a good example from Iowa. Our home in southern New Mexico, and my wife and I are kind of slowly transitioning up here. She moved up about 5 years ago, and I've been increasingly based in Boulder. But we're lived previously and still sort of live in southern New Mexico. My neighbor had a couple of pecan trees. One was producing a lot. One wasn't producing at all. And we couldn't figure out why. They were the same tree, they were watered the same, fertilized and everything. We finally realized one of them was on a sandy soil and one was on a loamy soil. And he wasn't irrigating the sandy soil often enough. So the sand doesn't hold very much water versus a loam. The loam holds a lot more water that plants can access. And so just knowing that difference, and in fact, this is, you know, the information you're going to be providing to the landowners, to the farmers, is information that if we could provide some more interpretation, we haven't built all this out, could actually help them with things like how often they irrigate their farm or their land, their yard, and so forth. So we're basically working with 4 modules, and I apologize, I didn't redo the presentation from this morning. I had another group I was working with. The land info module, land management, soil health, and uncovered. And we're going to go through each of those. You guys have already done this, and we're actually going to go through this process. So I think, Dan, what I'm going to suggest is that we go ahead and just go through the app and learn how to use the app, and then it will, yeah, that's a good example. It's an authentication error. So that was just Google coming back and saying, wait a minute, we can't find you. So you just tap it again and go. And then come back and go through that Google Doc. Does that make sense, or do you want to go to that first? I think it makes sense.
Yeah, let's go through the app.
Okay,
I
great.
think that makes sense to go through that first.
Let me grab my other phone because I may need to reference that one as well. I'll be right there in 5 seconds. Okay, great. So when you first open it, you won't see all these plots. And I'm actually gonna, let's see if I can, I was just gonna see if I could actually go to the Zoom screen. Oh, it looks like not. Okay, I'm not quite sure what happened. I just like to bring you guys up so I can actually see nodding heads, at least some of them, when we're doing this, but I don't think it's gonna let me. Let's see, share, nope. Okay, all right, so I can't see you guys, so you're really gonna have to speak up. And I also can't see the chat because the chat is hidden by my screen that I'm sharing. Okay, all right, so yeah, please do speak up. So what you see is a screen here that has a bunch of tabs at the bottom. And the most important one initially, in case you have any issues with this, is More. And under More, you'll see in its typical application settings. And when you go to application settings, you can switch this from English units to metric units, and actually starts off with metric units. Which are you guys most likely to be using, metric or English? And this is basically, you're just going to be using centimeters or inches is the question.
Well, I guess as you know, we did both with our SCI, but it's been primarily metric.
Okay. If you run into a farmer that doesn't like metric, just go to settings and you can switch it. But I'll go ahead and do the training in English in metric. I don't know if you have any Spanish speakers. You can also switch the app to Spanish, Swahili, or French. I'm assuming almost everybody will be in English. And then if we do have problems with the app, it's helpful to send a debug report and then send us an email. And I'll provide this again at the end, but contact@landpotential.org with the time and date that you sent the debug report. I'm not anticipating that you'll need this, but issues may come up, and it's really helpful for us to be able to figure them out as quickly as possible. The other thing that we have here is the soil color settings. And the sample you can leave as small. The color reference, though, you are going to want to change to a 3M yellow Post-it note. And this, it'll become clear why that is later on. So is everybody with me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna start asking since I can't see you. It just drives me nuts. If
Yes.
I can't see you guys, and I'll just say, is there anybody that's not with me? And then I get one no and I stop. How's that? Okay. And great. You guys are probably much better distance learning than I am because you had to do the end of the school year this way. Okay, great. And then the user input you're not going to need. So it's basically just the 3M yellow Post-it notes. And that is literally, if you guys are still able, oh, there we go. If you guys are still able to see me, it's literally just a Post-it note. The thing is you're going to want to stack them because they're going to get wet and dirty. And also, because we're using them as a color reference, you actually want a stack of about at least 4 of them, because you can actually see through them and you can see colors through it. So for example, if I hold this up and I hold a, well, you can't because I'm not backlit. If I were backlit, you'd actually see that you can see the pen through it. So we're going to select 3M yellow Post-it note. And then we're going to go back home or just use the back button. And again, I'm showing you this on an Android. There's slightly different navigation on an iPhone. If you get stuck, let me know. That's why I went and grabbed my phone. It's an iPhone. Okay. So the other things at the bottom of this that are relevant is the map. And there are basically 2 ways to decide where your plots are. And one is simply by hitting the plus button, and that's probably the one you guys are going to use the most. But first, I just want to show you, because in your classrooms, if you end up using this, you may actually want to play around with the map. When you click on the map, so go ahead and just follow along. Of course, you can change it to satellite. You can go anywhere in the world. And literally, you can take your students to Africa. And click on a place in Africa, and you can view soil information about that location in Africa, and climate information and so forth. We're not going to use this, so go ahead and hit back, and instead go ahead and hit the plus at the top of the screen. So right at the top of the screen it said hit plus.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're just waiting for the location accuracy to drop. If you're indoors and don't have your Wi-Fi turned on your phone, it may not even give you a location accuracy because it's so rough. Is anybody not getting a number on location accuracy?
No, I've got one.
Everybody's got one. Okay, great. When you're outdoors, we want to get this number as low as possible. So give it, 30 seconds or a minute or something. Generally, it dials in pretty quickly unless you've been on a plane recently, which most people haven't these days. So, so then I just hit use GPS, and of course I could also enter the latitude and longitude. And I'm going to give it a name. And for this one, we're just going to say, give it some dumb name like test.
Yeah,
Or,
do we want to wait? How low do we want to wait for the number to get ideally?
So ideally you want it as below 5 meters.
Okay.
It's great if you can get it to 3 or 4 meters.
Okay.
Inside right now, mine says 65. Would you expect
Okay.
being indoors?
I'm guessing you have your Wi-Fi turned off. On your
No,
phone.
it's on, but it could just be a weird spot in my house.
Mine is going down really slowly, Kim. It just went from an 8 down to 5. So I think it just takes a little bit.
Okay.
If you're
Mine was at 65 and went to 10
Mine's
over the
12
last.
and it's not moving at all. Mine is also sitting at 65.
Okay.
Run around 65 meters.
So I do not order anything from
Yeah.
Uber Eats right now because it's using the same service and they're going to give it to your neighbor up the street. Okay, so all these apps basically are using the same.
Yeah. And you said
service.
3 to 4 meters was ideal?
That's really good. Yeah, you're going to end up in some backyards where you're like between a garage and a house and there's not enough satellites. So it all depends on the number of
Right.
satellites the phone can see and
Okay.
the wireless networks, towers and so forth. So, but yeah. Okay.
So we're supposed to give it a silly name?
Give it a silly name, and you're probably going to want to delete this thing off your phone at some point because you're going to put some crazy data in it. So yeah, so I'm just going to call mine a boulder test. And then once you got that, you just scroll up, and this is critical now. It says private. And if you hit private, it says your site will not appear on the LandPKS public website. This is a public data collection project. I'm assuming you guys have already got some sort of agreement with the landowners that you're going to be sharing their data. And so whether you're doing it on your phone or they're doing it on their phone, you're going to want to not hit private. You're going to want to leave it privacy off. If you do make it private, what's going to happen is the only person that's going to be able to get at those data are the person that can log into that Gmail account. So if one of your folks, now they can always turn it off again and, you know, later on. So it's not the end of the world if they don't do it, but it is something at the end of the season you want to confirm if they end up collecting the data on their own phones to make sure that you can actually get at the data. Otherwise it's going to be not lost, inaccessible. I mean, in theory, we could get into the database and get those data, but you know, the rule is if it's marked private, you know, we're not supposed to, and we're you know, trying to stick with that. And also it's a little harder to find and so forth, figuring out what the plots are. So try to make sure it's not.
Sorry,
What's
if
that?
someone leaves your program and they delete your app, but they left it on public or whatever, will you get that data?
It'll still be there. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, it doesn't go away.
okay,
Yeah.
so they'd have to physically go in and change it to private if they really cared. And okay.
Yeah.
Get them
So
started.
if they deleted the app and then all of a sudden they say, oh, but hey, my data's still up there, they'd have to go onto the website, log into their Google account, and then they could change it to private.
Is there any reason why you can think of why anyone would care to not have it be public?
So actually farmers are quite sensitive about all data. And there are a number of reasons for that. A lot of which have to do with the Endangered Species Act and with the Wetlands Act. Okay. And so if you're, you know, if you have a wetland, obviously you're not supposed to plow it, you're not supposed to, et cetera. If you have an endangered species, you're under more development restrictions. Of course, in Boulder, you can't develop anything anyway. And so it's probably less of a concern because very little of the open space is subdividable, but, or not the open, but the non-developed.
Quick clarification for Sue. The way the screen is right now, that is public. So when the button's white, that's public. So that should be the default.
Yeah, the default is public, right? When you hit the green button, it then says your site will not appear on it. When I switch it back, we should probably have another pop-up message that says your data are now public. Data.
Hey, Jeff.
Yep.
If, one second, I'll start my video. On my screen, it's never found the latitude and longitude. So what would I do in that case? It's just
okay. So in that case, what you can do is you can go back, you can go down to the map and you can actually navigate to your spot. So I would basically go and now if it's a little odd, if you may have your location permissions. I mean, the other thing you can do is go to your location permissions, make sure that you've given, because you may have inadvertently not given permission to LandPKS. So that's probably the first thing I'd do. But if for some reason that doesn't work, then just go, and in my case, I have given location permission, so it knows exactly, well, okay, it's close. I'm actually in this condo unit here in Shanahan Ridge, and it thinks I'm in my neighbor's, but it's pretty close. And so basically what I could do is if I was going to do this in the little patch of grass outside of our yard, I could just tap right there, and then I could create the LandPKS plot.
Okay.
Okay. And in fact, if you're having problems with accuracy or precision rather on the phone, getting a good GPS signal, you can always just go in and use the map. It's just, you have to navigate because it's, you know.
Okay. Thank you.
but that can be kind of fun too. And again, it just depends on, it's really too bad with COVID, because really what you want to be doing is like leaning over each other's shoulders, looking at each other's phones. And it's going to be harder.
I got it. I figured it out and made a plot.
Okay. All right. Great. So I'm going to go back and, oh, great. No. Okay. So I think, what was I calling mine that I just saved? Oh, I guess I never saved it. Great. Okay, so I'll just create a new plot. And again, don't worry, it's so easy just to delete stuff, and it's like any other app, you can't break it. So I'll hit that and a folder test. Hit save. And so now what it's doing is it's actually getting information. And so this is kind of cool. If you're out there with the landowner and they're doing this on their phone, the first thing you're going to want to show them is, hey, you've already got information. And again, this is something that Dan was really emphasizing, is what's the value back to the landowner? You've already got information that they could have gotten from another source, but they're probably not aware of those sources. Very few people are. And that information is in the report. And in the report, basically, we've got a whole bunch of tabs. Most of them are empty right now because I haven't put any information in. And we're going to provide some better symbology here so that you know when you've got new information. The one that does have information is soil ID. So I click on soil ID, and it has listed my 2 soils that have been mapped in this area. Now, I don't know which of these soils is mine, but the most likely one, based on the dominance of that soil, so they basically list the soils in terms of which one is most common, right here on Shanahan Ridge, is Netherland. Okay, and the second most likely, and that's based on GPS. If I hit one of these other tabs, GPS plus data or data, it says to view, we need to complete data input for all these things. And we're going to go over in here. And again, we're working on better navigation on this to make it a little more intuitive. But basically, that's what it's telling you. So I go back over here. My soil is just a big red question mark. And if I tap on the question mark, it says I haven't recorded any information. So please enter soil texture, etc. So here I can also look at the colors of the soil. So if I go up here and click on this, I can click on color. It'll show me what the colors should be. And I can click on rock fragment. And I can see that these are very stony soils, not surprising, up on Shanahan Ridge. Okay. Is anybody not able to access this information?
I'm sorry, I somehow got lost. I can see a whole bunch of stuff, but not soil property.
Okay, so if are you then on the report side? So click on the report side.
Uh-huh.
And then click on the soil ID.
It was
Got
there.
It was there. Okay. It's not, again, the navigation is not ideal. And in fact, we just are about to make an offer to a communications expert who's going to join our team for at least the next year, who I think is going to be phenomenal in really helping us with navigation. So yeah, and we'll be looking for that feedback as well. Okay, so everybody's there. Okay, so now you can close that. And there's really not a lot of other information there. There is a climate tab, but it's so coarse that, I mean, our climate, the average precipitation changes dramatically between Lafayette and Shanahan Ridge. And it's amazing how often I bike home from campus and it doesn't rain at all down there, and it's raining up here. So this is really coarse information. I mean, you can show it to them, but it's more interesting if they're like driving across the country or something, because it's like, I don't know, 70 80-kilometer grid cells. I mean, it's basically covering a huge area. And at the front range, climate changes so quickly over space that it's not very relevant. So let's go over to the data input side now. And on the data input side, if you scroll up and down, you'll see we have those modules that I listed. Land info, land management, soil health, and land cover. And again, the two that we're going to be focusing on are land info and soil health. Optionally, and again, this is for this team to decide, you may want to monitor land cover, because then we can start to look at the vegetation response. Okay, and actually, you know, with compost, for example, we may see initially, just because of the compost itself, you may see less vegetation because it's covering some of it. But then later on in the season, see a response and actually see more vegetation. So that's an optional thing we can do. And then the land management, keeping track of the management of their land is also optional. So let's go ahead and run through the land info. This one, you're going to want to go ahead and complete the first three and the last of. So land use, land slope, soil texture, and soil color. The soil limitations is one, again, that we'll look at, and then you guys can decide if you want to include it in this program. So Dan, this is something I was hoping to go through with you guys as a final check. So we go to land use, and you're all going to end up clicking this one, because it's basically people's gardens or yards. Okay, this was developed for Africa. Remember, most poor small farmer Africans, whoa, I just tilted it, don't have yards, but they do have gardens. If we were on Boulder open space, we'd be in grassland. And if we moved up into the forest, we'd have forest. So we'll go ahead and click on garden. Grazing, unless you're out on some of the farms, you're probably going to have no grazing. If some of the landowners want to say that they have wildlife because deer have been invading their backyards, that's fine. You can click on wildlife. This is really more descriptive. You're not going to end up using these in your analyses, but it's also a way to get people comfortable with the app as they go, especially if you're using with the landowners, because like, oh yeah, I can do that. Land slope is actually really important. And some of the yards you're going to be working on are going to have something of a slope. And this is going to be helpful as we start to interpret even last year's data. You can pick a picture. You can also use the slope meter. Now, I will warn you, I was just talking with my app developer about this yesterday. The slope meter sometimes gets stuck. And apparently gets stuck not just in our app, but in a lot of apps, because it's using, again, it's using services. But if you go to the slope meter, and also there's a conversion issue right now, but basically that we have to fix. But you can use the slope meter, and you're basically just tilting the side of it. You need to tilt it away from you a little bit, and then you just tilt the side of it so that just slightly away from you, like 5 degrees, tilt the side of it so that it's basically lined up along the slope. So you kind of look across it. You could put it on a stick on the ground that is sort of at an average slope for your area. Okay. And then when you kind of got it dialed in, you hit lock. And you say, yes, do you want to use this value? And if you're lucky and you tip your phone back over again, it doesn't get all locked up. If it does locked up, then you just close your phone and open it again, and it'll take you right back. Or not close your phone, close the app and open it again. Is everybody back on, is anybody not back on this screen?
Can I ask what so it's 20, whatever percentage, and then there's that degrees underneath?
Yeah, and actually, okay. I just realized that is, yeah. So the percentage of the degrees, so let's go back there again. So degrees, slope is measured in 2 ways. And one is from 0 to 90 degrees, where 90 is vertical, and the other is 0 to 100% slope, where 100% slope is actually 45 degrees.
Mm.
And the way they calculate percent slope is the rise over the run. So anybody that's ever built stairs,
Mhm.
okay, you're basically calculating a percent of the tread versus the height of that stair. Okay, and so that's your percent. It's weird to have two systems, but that's the way they do it.
And then from this screen, if I choose not to use the slope meter, how do you get back?
So just hit accept, but then go ahead and override it, which was what I've done here. So I hit accept to go back, okay, and then
you'd say no.
and then you'd say no if you don't want to, or say
Okay.
yes if you do want to override it. And we've
But it
actually
keeps me there on that same screen where it wants me to still set a slope.
yeah, so you have to choose one way or the other. Either you just go ahead and accept it. So if I
Okay.
use the slope meter and I hit lock and I say
Oh.
confirm,
Okay,
and then to get out of it, I would just hit back.
got it.
Okay. But that screen, the slope screen, is still, I agree, it's great to go through this slowly with you guys. Usually I just kind of crash through it as a demonstration. It's nice to, percent over percent. Okay, great. Okay, so that's slope. The next one is texture, and we're going to spend 2 hours on Monday, I think, going through texture.
We don't have to do anything with slope shape.
Oh, I'm sorry, slope shape. Thank you. Good catch. Somebody's paying attention. All right. So yeah, go to slope shape, and we do want to do slope shape. And this, I can't actually sort of see you guys. Can anybody explain this to me? What is this trying to describe?
Box One's a skate park.
Excellent, you got it.
Is it a quarter pipe? Was that what it?
But do the lines represent the way that the way that
The curvature.
Yeah, the curvature. And it's
Concave versus convex.
yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Exactly.
What about?
Oh,
okay.
Is this how water would move over?
Yeah. Yeah. That's why it's there. That's perfect. That's exactly why it's there. So what's the difference between the left and the right? Oops.
Your orientation.
Yeah. So you're looking down the slope or you're looking across the slope. Okay. So if you think about like a gully could be at the bottom of a concave slope as you're looking down it. If it's starting to flatten out, right? So that would be the down slope. But then it's also obviously concave as you're looking across it because you're kind of at the bottom of the valley. Most of your slopes are going to be linear. They're pretty boring. Most yards are designed to be linear. There's a few here in South Boulder, well, in North Boulder too. I guess you get up onto some of the slopes and so forth, and you might see some of this. But the concave, and again, from a carbon sequestration perspective, concave, what's the best place in the landscape to sequester carbon? Where are you going to get the highest vegetation production in the landscape?
Moist.
From a water perspective.
Where it's moist.
Yeah, and where is water going to collect? Which one of these shapes is going to collect water?
Which one?
Okay.
Right at the bottom of the first one. Yeah. No.
Yeah, for the concave.
Yeah.
Top of the screen, right? Because water's coming down that slope and then it's slowing down, has more time to soak in. So
Well,
concave.
Yeah. Will it carry things too? So.
Yeah, it might actually bring some carbon from upslope and deposit it down there as well. And you'll see that. Your soils at the bottom of the slopes tend to be very deep, very well watered, very productive. And in fact, that's where the Native Americans, if you look at where Native Americans put their gardens, concave at the base of a slope, especially in arid environments. So if you go down to southern Colorado and so forth, you'll see this. So again, lots of stories that can be told, and also these data will help with the interpretation. Okay, so back, and again, I'm going to leave the soil texture for our the next time, and I'm actually going to leave soil color as well. We'll do that as at that point as well. You certainly can actually. For soil color, I'm going to show you now in case you want to play around with it, because again, the navigation is not as obvious. The soil texture is a little clearer. For soil color, all you need to do is take that 3M Post-it note, put it down next to your soil, make sure your soil is flat and doesn't have any shadows in it. And when you tap on it, make sure you select camera, because we're going to use the camera. Otherwise, you're going to have to go get a soil color book. You hit start. And you take a picture of your soil with your 3M Post-it note. Make sure they're evenly illuminated. It's best to have overhead lighting and not oblique lighting. And fluorescent seems to be problematic because you've got all that sort of flickering across constantly. And so you can get, you basically, you need the same illumination on both, because we're using everybody's camera. If we all take a picture with our cameras and phones of the same shirt, that shirt is going to look like it has a slightly different color in each of our cameras. And so what we do is we know what the color is of the 3M Post-it note, and we're able to use a bunch of math to then basically correct the color. So we're doing a color correction essentially. So I hit OK. I tap the card, and then someplace that's evenly illuminated, like the card, I touch the soil. I check to make sure it's a 3M yellow Post-it, that my soil moisture is dry. And this is something we're going to have to talk through on Monday, is how we sort of deal with all that. Ideally dry. If it's not, make sure that you change it to moist, but we'd like it to be dry. It's possible. And the photo has even light and no shadows. And if I hit save, it actually calculates. And for those, this is called the Munsell system. So there are basically 3 systems that are used to describe color. One is RGB, red, green, blue. One is something called LAB. And one is the Munsell system. And then of course the paint companies have their own little numeric system that they use, but they often describe their colors in terms of the Munsell chart as well, which is kind of interesting. And you can use this on soils or anything else as you want. I take a look at that. I make sure that it looks at least vaguely like what I'm looking at, because usually if the thing doesn't work very well, it's because I had poor illumination, and it'll give you some completely different color, and you'll say, that doesn't even look close to what I had. But that does actually look like my old desk. I can then go, what's that?
Sorry to interrupt you. When you're finished explaining that, would you mind running through it one more time for me? I'm a little slow on this.
Yeah, you bet. No, and I'm going through very...
I missed some of the stuff because I'm actually trying to do it on my desk too, just to see. But
oh, cool.
So I just want to make sure I get it right, because when I do something, it's harder for me to forget it.
Yep, no, absolutely. And we will run through this again on Monday. This is kind of a quick demo for those that want to play around with it. But let me do one more. So I'll go down to the next depth. So these are depths on the left. I hit start. And I take my picture. And once I look at my picture and I say, yeah, that's pretty evenly lit. It's not ideal, but you know, I'm going to try it. So I go ahead and hit OK. And then I touch the card. And now it's saying touch the soil, but it was like, oh, well, wait a minute. I didn't actually touch the card where I wanted it to. So I can go down here to where it says reference. I can click on it again, and it'll tell me, yeah, I can try it again. Oh, no, wait a minute. I didn't like that either. So I can click on it again, and I can try it again until I get the location I want. And then I touch the soil. And
I'm having that happen for me. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm on a different kind of phone than you.
Okay.
And I've got, so it gives me, so when I want to do it, I push start and it gives me my camera.
Yeah.
And then I'm taking a picture, part like you, just like you are, partly of my desk, partly of the sticky notes with tried to have even light, right?
Yeah.
So I take the picture and then it says I can retake it or I can use the photo.
Mm-hmm.
So I use the photo
Yeah.
and now here it is. And then do I have to touch where it says touch card? Or
Yeah.
do I touch on the picture or do I touch where it says reference or soil?
You actually touch the card itself. So so this is good. Because we're rework the navigation on this. So literally my finger is tapping. So if I hit reference here, so that it's selecting the reference, I literally touch the card and it moves that little box.
Okay, so the sticky note or whatever,
Yeah.
I'm touching it, it's not doing anything. Do I need to touch reference first, right? Reference, oh, I did it, it did it.
Woo-hoo. All
Okay.
right, good.
Okay, and then soil, I touch soil and then I do the,
Yeah, yep.
okay.
Yeah, I hit the soil.
Maybe,
And then-
okay. All right,
Okay.
thank you. It
And
didn't
then
do it
again-
the first time for me. It took a couple of touches and now I got it. Thank you.
And again, depending on the sensitivity of your phone and different touch screens, screen protectors, this can become problematic. And of course, every time your phone gets hot, it becomes even worse. And you've got a cracked screen. Believe me, this was developed for Africa, and I'd say about 80% of the screens we work on there are cracked, and it doesn't like cracked screens.
Okay.
So, cool. Okay, and so you can continue down. So we're gonna head back now because I want to get through the rest of this.
Okay.
So that's it. You've now done this, and if I hit synchronize now, it's going to take all that information and it's going to store it in the cloud. And if I have entered the soil texture data, and actually we're going to go through this later, but I want to show you what happens. So with the texture data, we're actually going to go through a little key here. I'm just going to select some textures really quickly. I just want it to change for me, so I'm going to do this. And again, don't try to follow along now. We really are going to spend a ton of time on this on Monday. So we're going to go back now. I'm going to hit synchronize now. So once I've entered this texture data, and I can go back to report. And now when I go to soil ID, my soil is there. Okay. And I can look and I can compare texture. I can compare rock fragment. And I can compare color. Now clearly I made this up, so none of them match at all. Okay. And you don't expect them to match perfectly, but they should match a little bit more than that. Now, what's interesting, although it's not going to change this time, I don't think, because of what I put in, is that if I, based on the location alone, the most likely soil is in Netherlands. Based on data, it's still in Netherlands because this profile, and this is basically representing the sand, silt, and clay content. So stipples are sand, and the darkness is clay, and that's what you're just looking at this soil profile from 0 to 120 centimeters. It's basically showing you what your soil is compared to the other soils, and it's also re-ranking them. So this is the soil identification function. Now, because we're probably not going to be digging very deep, this soil identification function won't work all that well because you actually need a deeper description. The good news is, in terms of interpreting the soil carbon information, it's going to be very helpful because we will at least get down to 20 centimeters, and that's the depth of the carbon sampling. That's going to help us with those interpretations that Dan was talking about earlier. So it's a good thing from that perspective. They may not exactly get their soil identified. If they're able to dig a deeper hole later on, they can do a better job with that, but they'll at least have a good idea. So back over to the data input side, and again, if you'd like to play around with soil texture before Monday, that would be a good thing. It's pretty self-explanatory. There's literally a key here. There's a guide me key. There are little videos in there that'll show you what to do. And I will actually be demonstrating this on Monday for you and how to go through it. And we'll run through it with your own soils. Great. So any questions on that module before we move on to the other ones? Okay. So
Very
the other what's that?
I just wanted to share. It's very cool. It's really fun.
Oh, good to hear.
Yeah, it'll be so fun. One of my friends is jealous that I'm getting trained on this.
Oh, really?
I hang out with a lot of geologists.
Okay. Well, they could have joined. They're welcome to join anytime. We do these pretty frequently.
Yeah. She's like, that's so cool.
Great. Yeah, we trained some, you guys are familiar with Stonyfield Farms, Stonyfield Yogurt, and we trained some of their farmers. And I guess in one case, it was a family that runs their dairy farm for supplies Stonyfield. And Stonyfield's sustainability director was on there, and she got a text from one of the farmers that said, this is so simple and easy to use. Even Pops loves it. LOL. So that was my. I think I decided I can quit now. Pops, dairy farmer Pops loves it. Then I think we're okay. We got a long ways to go though. So you guys are going to be a big part of improving this. And like I said, the timing of this new designer coming on is just fantastic. You'll get to meet her. Assuming the whole hiring process goes through. And she may even join us on Monday, actually, just as an informal kind of thing. Okay, great. So let's go to soil health. Land management is the next one, but the soil health, I want to make sure we get through this because that is the next one that we're definitely going to be using. So soil health uses a calendar. You tap on the calendar, and you tap on the day. And you can actually tap on any day, but you can't enter data for future dates. I know some of you are probably very, good at seeing the future, but we're not actually allowing for that in this app. So you can click on past days. So if you, for example, were out there, if you got to take your phone or something wasn't working, you can write down the data and you can actually go to that last Wednesday and enter the data. We'll go ahead and enter for today on the 27th. And we've got a series of field observations here.
I'm not sure I'm in the same place. I do sort
Okay.
of, it says beta, and all I have is download a PDF report, and then there's field observations, field tests.
Yep. You are in the report side. We want to be back over on the data input side.
Thank
okay.
you.
Yeah, good navigation. Yeah,
And
thanks.
that's under
So the data input and report
soil
tabs
health.
are at the
Got it.
top.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yep.
Great. Good catch. Okay, so now we're in the field calendar and we can click on a date. We've got some field observations. Now what's going to happen this summer at some point is the number of field observations is going to explode because we are actually adding a whole bunch. And even the ones that are here, a couple of them are going to become a little bit different. And this is so that we can align the app with the Natural Resources Conservation Service and what they're doing on farms and so forth. So actually at the end of the summer, and I'm not sure, Dan, how this is all going to work at the end of the summer and who's going to be involved, but at the end of the summer, we will have the opportunity to add more information about more soil health indicators. For now, I just want to go through these, and this is actually going to be good for learning what we need to learn about these pieces of land. So the first one is erosion. And again, with all these, if you're not sure what's going on, just tap the question mark text at the top. And it actually describes each of these indicators, the water flow patterns, the rills, and the gullies, if you scroll up. Hoping we're not going to have any gullies in these backyards. I don't expect to see very many rills, but we may, depending if somebody has a new lot and they just seeded it or something like that. The water flow patterns is the one we want to focus on. And this one is actually fascinating to and something you can encourage them to do. Next time it rains, encourage them to go out and watch their plots. If it's thundering, obviously don't go outside, but even through the window, and watch how water flows across their plots. Because what will happen is they'll start to see that the way water flows across the plots is then observable after the rain in the way that the litter is distributed and things are matted down and so forth. I just realized I should get you guys some pictures for this, and I'll try to do that for Monday, because we actually have some in Rangeland Health Book, and this is a lot easier to show in person. But essentially, you're looking to see if it looks like water has flowed across, or if it's just soaked in. And obviously, if it hasn't rained, if there hasn't been an intense storm recently, you're not going to see much. But if there has, you will. And over time, we expect to see fewer water flow patterns on, for example, the compost additions, because you're starting to get more biological activity. Water is being absorbed actually by the organic matter that's being applied. It just has longer to soak into the soil. And so you tend to see less. Initially, you may see more. We don't know. But again, you know, this is why we're doing this, is to learn. So these categories were obviously established for farms and ranches and rangeland and open space, and not for 10 by 10 foot backyard plots. So they're either going to be none, rare, or common, because the plots are only 10 feet wide, which is 1.5. It's 3 meters, and not very common. Okay, so I hit close, I go back there, and I can just select one of those. Okay, so I'm gonna hit none. Rills, again, the same thing. Rills are little channels. Hit none. Gullies, boy, I sure hope it's none. And if you guys have any gullies, please take a picture and send it to me. If you see a gully in a backyard. That may be one you want to mark the plot private, because the landowner may not want you to know about it. Okay, the next one is compaction. And the first question, is there a compaction layer? And again, we go to the question mark, and it defines a compaction layer as a near surface layer of dense soil that's hard for not just crop roots, but all roots and water to penetrate. Compaction is pretty common in our yards, because what happens when you build a house? You got all this machinery running all over it, and then they come in and they throw sod down on top of it. Okay, and meanwhile, unless they've grown a lot of shrubs or deep-rooted plants, dandelions are actually pretty good, because they do help break up compaction layers. You're likely going to find compaction there, and again, these compost additions right at the surface aren't going to help a whole lot initially, but as you get increased plant growth and so forth, it may help longer term. And so what you're going to be looking for here is basically just putting a trowel or something into the soil and sort of pulling it up, and you're looking for, and I'm sorry, things have been crazy. I should have really prepared a different set of slides for you. I'll get some better examples for next Monday. I'll tell over the weekend. So what you're looking for is basically sort of platey structure, where basically the soil has been compressed, and it kind of forms these plates. And the roots are, when it says restricts root penetration, basically what happens is the roots go down and then they go sideways. And you'll see this in some of the yards. You'll see the roots starting to go sideways. Extent, again, rarely present throughout the field, moderately or commonly or extensively. You've only got a 10 by 10 foot area to look in. You don't want to be digging the whole thing up, right? So you're going to have to be a little gentle and just maybe check a couple of spots. Okay, and then just, if it seems like it's pretty widespread, then you'll have to select one of these. So this is, again, work with what we have. So I'm going to go ahead and say, and then, so I've already recorded compaction. Aggregate stability is one, Dan, that we had talked about maybe doing as a supplementary one. We talked about those kits and so forth that we have. I think probably best not to include it in the protocol now, but between now and Monday, if you want to think about it, we can talk about that. There is a training video for this one that makes it pretty easy to learn, but it does require an extra 20 minutes. And so again, I don't know where you and Marty and Rosie are in terms of time allocation and so forth, but kind of think through that and we can decide. If we decide to train on it, we can come back to it. So smell is a good one. It only has 3 indicators. But this may actually respond to some of the treatments, whether it's a fresh, sweet, earthy smell, little or no smell, or a swampy, stagnant, or mineral smell. If you apply too much compost, you will start to get a swampy, stagnant, or mineral smell, right, at times. On the other hand, compost in the right amounts and with the right moisture conditions and so forth can give the soil an even more fresh, sweet, and earthy smell, especially if it's a soil that doesn't have much organic matter to begin with, that had little or no smell. So you may actually see some differences here. It'll be interesting to see if we do or not. Try to be careful with bias. Don't make assumptions as you're going in. And then biological activity. And right now, our biological activity is none, some, or many. And this is one of those that's going to be expanded in the new version of the app. And again, this is, you can see what it's adapted actually from a USDA soil health card for Colorado in this case. And so again, just when you're doing that little dig, so when you stick your trowel into these plots, you're going to want to observe both the compaction and the biological activity indicator, and then of course use your sense of smell. The soil tests we won't be using directly at some point, and again, we're just talking about this of where this database is ultimately going to reside and whether we might integrate the soil organic carbon measurements that we already have into this. If the farmers, the carbon farmers, want to put their own, Dan, I can't remember, in their reports, did you just send them aggregate reports or did you guys send them their individual values?
They can look up their individual values. It's on our webpage.
Okay, great. So if they choose to do so, and again, you'll want to provide all the standard caveats about those measurements, but if they choose to do so, and if they decide to collect the data on their phone, they can go ahead and they can put it in here. Okay, so those are, any questions? Those are the 2 key modules. Okay, the optional, go ahead.
More generalized question that I asked you, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page, is whether we are doing this once for 2 plots, test and control, or for each?
For each. So the confusion there was at one point we were talking about maybe only doing the land info once per yard. Given the fact that we're now only talking about going down to 20 centimeters or 8 inches, I would suggest you do it on each of those plots, partly because I don't expect to see any differences between the 2, but there may be in some yards, particularly yards that had a lot of landscaping, where they basically took 1 layer of soil and dumped it over, and then, so you may get some differences between your plots. If there are differences between your plots, it's really important because that will explain a lot of the carbon, the high variability in carbon differences that we got on some of those yards.
And there are big differences in the data. If you guys have looked at those, if you've looked for your own data or anything, there's pretty significant differences there. So there are differences between people's trial and control, test and control plots. So
how do we record those separately?
Yeah, so you'll be creating a separate plot for the treatment and a separate plot for the control.
Will we?
'Cause you're gonna-
I guess we will name it differently, even though
Yes.
it's going to look practically the same, right, on the map, on the GPS. It's gonna
Yes.
look
Yeah, and that's kind of a reason to use the map as opposed to the plus symbol, because you can locate them even more precisely. When we get to the naming convention, yeah, you definitely want to distinguish those.
Right.
But this is the whole idea, is that with the soil health, we're trying to compare the treatment and control. So good, yes. And that also, I think that's what I was working on last night, Dan. I think it just simplifies the whole thing. We're only going shallow. It keeps it right in line with what you're doing. The soil ID is not quite as precise, but people can optionally go deeper if they want to, but it sort of keeps us out of the running into people's, or you guys out of running into people's power lines or gas lines or whatever.
So that answers my question about how deep of a hole, but how wide of a hole do you guess
Doesn't have to be
we will
wide at
need in
all.
order to see what we need to see?
So for that first, the soil texture, you literally you could even use the push probes. I realized the push probes were not fun to use last time. You can use a push probe. I typically use a tile spade, which is if you just Google tile spade on the internet, you'll find them. But it's just a narrow spade with a rounded tip, and it brings up a chunk of soil about, I don't know, 6 inches wide, something like that. But a push probe is plenty. Now for the soil compaction for the compaction and biological activity, it's helpful to have, especially the biological activity. It's good to have a spade full of soil. But again, you want to be careful because these are only 10 by 10 foot plots, and you end up digging up the whole plot.
I think that's a good point. That maybe we should spring for some sharp, small, narrow spades, because I think if you can make a nice clean cut, then you can just put it right back. And some people are gonna care about digging a hole in their lawn, so we might want to thinking about getting a few of those.
Yeah, and I mean, the good ones from forestry suppliers are totally worth it. That's great. These are all like literally tile spades. For scraping tile off your floor so you can put fancy new tile. Here we go. So this Razorback, one of these guys, the Razorback, so this style is what you want. And that's actually not it's not a great one, but it's fine. The good ones from forestry suppliers are about twice that much.
I have one of those in my house, so if anybody.
One of these guys?
Yeah.
Oh,
and
great.
I might be able to find between my family that all gardens, I might, for what we need for a few weeks, I might be able to find us a few more.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And I'll keep an eye out at resource here too. So, but yeah, let's see if we can round up a few.
The other ones that work pretty well are these trenching shovels, although they're really designed more for literally for clean. I don't know if you guys have ever dug irrigation trenches, but clearing out rather than digging. So this is a better way to go. And the clean out shovel is an even more extreme. You can see the angle keeps changing. These are fine drain spades. It's the same concept. This one looks like it's a little more beefy. Don't get one of these flat things. You'll never get them into the ground. Those of you that have garden, I think, have figured this out. It's that you need that sort of rounded tip to get in. And they're also way too wide for what we need. So, yeah. Okay. Pack. Great. Okay. So that's soil health. Now let's go to the optional ones. And again, I think what's going to happen is you guys are going to play around with this and figure out how long it takes. And you may decide that you end up wanting to do one of these two optional ones on all of them or some of them or none of them. Wait and see. So the land cover is the optional one. And this is, you select the date, and we will need to convert this to a calendar as well, and we will. But you select your date, which is probably today or whatever day it is. And what it brings up is a screen that says dominant woody species and dominant non-woody species. Now, in most of your plots, you're not going to have a dominant woody species. But if there's a tree that is sort of extending its leaves over that plot, you could put that in there, and you can put in whatever you want. You can put in the common name, you can put in a scientific name. Again, at some point in the future, we may have drop-down lists and so forth. The non-woody species, if you don't know what kind of grass it is, you can just write turf grass. But just, you know, something that says it's not the native grass that's growing in there. Or, you know, if you actually do know that it is a spirobolus, and a native spirobolus, or not, I mean, actually, I think a lot of spirobolus are native, then you can put that in there. So maybe they've actually got more of a native sort of environment. And again, this long-term, this may be helpful information to have depending on where this direction, what direction this program evolves. But again, this is all optional at this point. Then you can see we've got 4 what are effectively transects here. And the way these are set up, they're set up for you to pace out either every 5 yards or every 5 meters and drop a stick. Well, obviously your plot is only 10 by 10 feet. So what I've suggested in the documentation that we'll provide is that you go out and literally put the stick out 1 foot from the center, and then every 2 feet after that. So it would be at 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9 feet. So you'd essentially be dropping this stick, and when you drop the stick, it's literally a yardstick or a meter stick. And again, I would probably suggest sticking with meter, and it doesn't have to be a fancy meter stick. It can be a stick that is 1 meter long from a tree. And that's actually typically what we use, is just a stick off a tree. It should be relatively thin, sort of pencil to sort of the thick pencils. I don't know if they're still using those in 2nd grade when you're learning to write, but you get a thicker pencil, at least when I was growing up. But something that's, you know, kind of like this pen that I've got, less than a, you know, maybe a 1/2 inch in diameter or less. And then you put these marks on it at these distances. And we're basically just going to be using the front of the stick. And in each of these marks, we then take a pin, like a pin flag or a pen, and we drop it. Oops. And we drop it at that point, and we record what it hits. And we literally mean at that precise pinpoint, not sort of what's it's near or whatever. If it falls between 2 blades of grass and it hits bare soil, I record bare soil. If I look up and I project up and it looks like it hit leaves on a tree, I hit tree. I then poke down and I hit a piece of plant litter, and under that plant litter I had a rock. At the next point, I had that tree again. I had plant litter. The next point, I had that tree again. There was no plant litter, it was just bare ground. And at the next point, there was nothing at all. There was a gap in the tree canopy, and I just had bare ground. Again, optionally, this is cover, and this is the main thing that we're going to be, I think, interested in here with this project. It also allows you to record the height of the vegetation. And typically what we do is we use the same stick and we record the maximum height in a 1 foot diameter circle in front of the center of the stick. So the maximum height in a 1 foot diameter circle in the center of the stick. For this project, again, if you decide to use this protocol, you could decide to do the average height. So you could just kind of put a plate down. So everybody, you could go get a set of paper plates, put the paper plate down on the vegetation or a glass plate, as long as everybody's got the same plate, and just measure the height of that plate. So that's kind of the average height of the grass. Now, obviously, if people are mowing at different times, this is not going to be terribly meaningful. the height stuff, but the cover stuff might be, because you could get changes in that structure. The gaps are not particularly helpful because you're basically looking to see if there's a gap the length of the stick. I hope that's not the case where you're working, but it can be an issue on open space. And this is actually one of the really good indicators for prairie dogs, because prairie dogs create really big gaps in the vegetation, and that's important from an erosion perspective. And then density. If somebody is doing a planting and they're trying to get seedling establishment, they may be interested in recording the number of species that occur in that 1 by 1 meter plot, the number of plants, not species, the number of plants that occur. And you can give the name. So I've planted some grass, or maybe I want to record, I want to keep track of, and again, we really don't know what the sensitive indicators are going to be, but maybe dandelion density ends up changing. So we could end up saying, okay, well, in this yard, I'm going to record dandelion density in my treatment and my control. And I've got 5 dandelions in that 1 square meter. So again, all sorts of things you guys can play around with and think about optionally. So you do that, and you do that for each of yours. And again, instead of being 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 meters, it would be 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9 feet. And then you go back and you do the same thing in all these other directions. It took me longer to explain that than it does to do it by far. Even when we're out in pastures and rangeland, recording all of those data for 20 different sticks, it takes less than 20 minutes. If you're sitting there doing that on a 10 by 10 foot and you're really cruising along, it should take you, if you're just doing the cover information, probably 10 minutes once you get used to doing it. It's very quick. You just drop the pin, you go grass, grass over litter, 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 bare ground, done. Next stick, grass, 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 grass over litter, grass over rock, litter, done. Next stick, literally that fast. About as, you know, you've got your pin on one hand and you've got your phone in the other hand, and, or, you know, the landowner is actually recording the data on their phone and you're just calling it out. Super fast. Could be interesting. I don't know. I mean, again, it's looking at a vegetative response. And if we're starting to think about the health of the land rather than just the carbon in the soil, but carbon in the soil is part of the health of the land, vegetation cover is where it's at. So this could be good. But again, right now, optional. Leave it to you guys to decide what you want to include.
So
go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm thinking that for me, this is a lot, and I'm excited about it. But what I would love if we could at some point, Dan, have like a checklist, so that when we go out in the field for, you know, that we have a list we can flow through to make sure we don't have to come back. Oh, I forgot that one thing, and come back. If we could have like a checklist so that we make sure that we, you know, the first time may take us a long time, but then it'll just quicken up the faster we are doing, you get used to doing it. I would just love to have something that makes sure I don't forget anything.
Yeah, we're gonna have a step-by-step protocol for you guys to follow.
Great.
Do this, then do that. Yeah, Jeff just created that yesterday and just need to look it over, and I'll send it to you guys.
Thank you.
You're probably going to want to expand it, Dan. And actually, she's got a really good idea. I didn't see who was talking. But one of the things you could do is then take what I created, which is really more about the plot creation. And then basically all I say is complete this module, complete that module. You could actually take a screenshot of this from your phone and a screenshot scrolling down, paste them together, and that becomes your checklist. So did I do land use, land slope, soil texture? And one of the modifications that we're working on the design for is in fact to have it show you when you've completed each of these, or at least completed some information for each of these. So there will be a little check mark or something.
Okay.
Would that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I need you to tell my developer that, because he hates the idea of check marks because it messes up the beauty of his app. But anyway.
You know, another thing that occurs to me, Jeff, if the landowner, the participant, is interested in doing this themselves, should we just focus on putting the information in their
Yes.
on their phone, use our
Yes.
phone, just make sure that we can get the data.
You could do both. Yeah, you could do it on their phone and on your phones. And that's actually not a bad idea to make sure you've got it. You're going to want to think about your nomenclature for that, though. So,
Name it the same thing.
because it's going to be, you're going to be recording, yeah, it's going to be two plots with the same information. But that actually, from a project perspective, would be very smart so that you guys are always recording information. They can go ahead and record it as well. Then they're going to say, well, why can't I just copy your information? You're going to say, because the app developers haven't made that possible yet, but they will. Thank you for your suggestion, because you're going to get that suggestion a lot. Okay.
Okay.
But yeah.
Could the user do this on their own phone and keep the information private to avoid duplication?
They could. It'll still end up in the database. But yeah, that in terms of having, sure, they could do that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, long term, they may be the ones that continue this longer. So if the project stops, they keep recording.
So it doesn't.
Could be kind of cool.
It wouldn't be bad for your data to you to have two people reporting on the same spot, the same. So yeah, right.
No, there's all sorts of plots. So of those 21,000 odd plots that have been uploaded, I would say a quarter to a third of them have just been people messing around.
Cool. Okay.
And an awful lot of them, you'll notice that, and I keep going in and deleting, but if you go on to the portal, you will see a bunch of them sitting on Shanahan Ridge. And especially now with COVID, I've been sitting here a lot. There are also a bunch sitting in the Seek building where I sit when I actually work in a building, the East Campus in Boulder.
Okay.
So you
Don't
worry about it. Don't worry about that. This app it's interesting because most citizen science is about citizens or the community science. It's about the community collecting data for scientists. This is the opposite. This is the scientific community trying to make knowledge and information available in a usable way for the community. Now, the data will actually be used by the scientific community as well, but that's not our primary objective. That's a co-benefit. And that's an important distinction. Whoops. Sorry, hitting too many buttons. Okay, we're getting close to 5. I want to make sure I get through the rest of these, but are there any other questions? Because I do want to get back to that instruction. Nope. Okay. So land management, this is the last one. And this one in some ways may be the most interesting, especially for the gardeners who may not want to use it on the experimental plots, but we want to use it to keep track of what they're doing in the gardens. When you tap a date, first thing they can do is start recording their rainfall. And I can select a unit, I hit add. If it rains again later in the day, I can do it again. Whoops, except that I got, and then I was like, oh no, wait a minute. Oops. I've said 2 centimeters. I meant 2 millimeters. I can go into edit, that little green thing, and then I'm able to change my centimeters to millimeters. Okay, so you can pop in and out and around, and you can go back any day and edit stuff. Irrigation, water source. So again, we weren't thinking of people's, city water here. So we're going to say surface really means flood irrigation, which a lot of the, we do use in open space. I could say other here, I guess, and it then becomes from my hose. The amount, I'm going to say 20. And my units are minutes because I ran the hose for 20 minutes and my rate was 10 gallons per minute. So however you want to record it, they can record the irrigation, etc. Plantings, the crop group, vegetables, the crop, carrots, add. So this is in my garden. Now my garden plot may have a whole ton of crops. I can add them all. So I just keep adding. So I've got another fruits and I'm going to grow some bananas and so forth. Tillage, The operation, actually, and this works pretty well, was designed for Africa. So we do have the hand hoe. The power is human, unless I have my dog out there helping me. And the number of passes, however many times I go through it. So I'll say 5. Okay, and so forth. Now, what gets a little confusing, because we didn't consider this, is the lawn mowing. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a crop group, and I'm going to say grass fodder crops. And I'm going to add a perennial grass fodder crop, which is effectively a lawn, and I hit add. Now, when I go down to harvest, I'm going to select my perennial grass, so it's already in there for me. And now, when I mow my lawn, what's my yield? Well, my yield is 2, and I don't have inches in here because we weren't thinking about that. Now, what would be really interesting, though, is if, you know, and you may get some folks in here that are like totally into this, like, oh, I'm just going to go and I'm going to just mow each of those 2 treatment plots, and I'm going to record how many, and I'm going to weigh it, and I'm going to weigh how many bushels I get. But fortunately, we do have an other here, and so I could just record 2 inches. We obviously need to add in the other. We've got to add so they can define what other is in land management. Okay, so again, designed for farming, but you know, it's here. And again, I've just thrown in a bunch of suggestions here. Those are the suggestions we want to have coming from you. How would we optimize this to make it for a landowner backyard app? Okay, and you can see now I can go back, I can look at my calendar, I can go to the report, and I can go to land management, and I can actually look at the start and end date. So I'll start yesterday, and I'll go until tomorrow, and I can download it, or I can just generate a report, and it provides me with all that information. So my irrigation, my rainfall was recorded here. And it looks like I added instead of, I need to double check to see what I actually put in there, that I added instead of edited, or if that's a bug. Okay, and the last thing we can do, and here we get into a bit of a privacy issue, and Dan, we didn't talk about this. Normally we do photos, and we do photos in these landscape photos in the different directions, north, south, east, and west. Not sure you want to get into that with this project, but I'll leave it to you guys whether you want to do that. The pit photo would actually be good, where you just take a little picture of where you've dug up the soil, where you're going to get the texture samples, and then the samples photo itself would also be very good, and there shouldn't be any privacy issues associated with that. But I'd be a little bit careful of landscape photos, because you can inadvertently include kids in the photos, and you guys are teachers. I don't need to tell you any of this. I just realized that's totally redundant with what you guys deal with every day. And then notes obviously are super helpful. You know, there was a big boulder in one of the plots, or the landowner decided that they were going to put their trampoline on top of one of them and it's been shaded all the time, or the kiddie pool got dropped in the middle of, you know, those kinds of things. Those are going to be super helpful. And they get recorded there. And then again, you can always change to private if somebody all of a sudden freaks out and says, I don't want anybody knowing what kind of soil I have in my yard. Okay, fine. We'll change it to private. So that's it for the app. Probably good if you guys can play around with it a little bit between now and Monday, when we'll spend a lot more time learning the soil texture part, which is the most important. I'm trying to get to my Google Doc.
When you're all done, do you synchronize?
Oh yeah, sorry, thank you, good. So the fact that it's yellow means
Yeah.
it needs to be synchronized. When there's a little cloud button, it means that I have synchronized it. So yeah, definitely hit synchronize to make sure your data get uploaded. Otherwise, if you lose, so until then, it's just sitting on your phone. Once it's synchronized, it will be available forever, or at least as long as we maintain this database.
Okay.
Because it's, and basically if you lose your phone, it doesn't matter. You just download the LandPKS app on another phone. I realize that'll be the least of your worries if you lose your phone. but yeah, don't worry about your project, because you'll just, you know, when you get a new phone or another phone or borrow somebody's phone, you just log into your Gmail account on your LandPKS on the new phone.
Also, the generate a PDF report, would that generate a report with all of this information we've just read that we could send to the homeowner?
Yeah, and I would suggest create a couple of test plots, play around with that function, and let me know if it's working for you, because that's something we may be able to update a little more easily than some of the other things.
Just thinking, given COVID, you don't want to be too close to a home.
Right.
Trying to coach them how to use the app while you're
Right.
there, but that would supply them with information that we just gathered.
Absolutely. And again, so this is the PDF. Whoops, actually you guys can't see that because I don't have the phone. So I just hit, and let me go back. Oh, and by the way, there's a little bug with the PDF report. I need to find out when that's going to get fixed, because on Android phones, we've had a little bit of a problem where it's making the app crash. You don't lose any data, but it's a known issue, and I think they've solved it.
Well, and it looks like one of the options on my phone is send it or copy it to the drive, bless you. So if we're on Google and we generated that report and copied it to the Google Drive, we could then send it later to the homeowner.
You could go from there. Yeah, exactly. So it does generate quite a bit of information. It's actually sort of calculating the available water holding capacity. I didn't even show you guys that. It's providing, you know, a bunch of information that's not very well interpreted. It's literally just spitting out a bunch of information. It's a little bit easier to understand than a soil report, but still not all that easy. And yes, it is still crashing on my phone because it hasn't been updated yet. I will try to find out if that's going to happen. It should happen soon. So one other thing I forgot on the data input side, sorry, is on soil limitations, we have a list of things that we use to determine the land capability class. Some of these are completely irrelevant, but actually, again, for this project, Dan, this is really quick and easy information to collect. It may be worth just going through that list. And again, I'll leave it to you to decide if you want to include that in the checklist or not. All these things are explained. We do actually have some soils that have these deep vertical cracks when the soil is dry. Some of the soils in Boulder have that, and it's a really useful thing to help with the soil identification. So that one alone is a really good thing to do. Salt on the surface, again, hopefully you're not going to find this in most of your yards. If you go down to Marshall Road, between Cherryvale and 36, and you look off to the right where 66th Street cuts off and goes up the hill. So it's basically, if you're heading from Boulder down to Costco and the back road down on Marshall Road, there is an area that has quite a bit of salt accumulation. I'm not sure what it's from. And you'll see that, and actually it's on most of the surface. Flooding during the growing season, again, you know, you can just go through these question marks on your own and see. The water table depth you won't be able to answer because you're not going to be digging deep enough to find a water table, I hope. Although where I am here on Shanahan Ridge, we do actually have a surface water table because of the hydrology, and it's only about a foot deep in some of the areas, some of the drainages. Okay. Great. So I realize we're running out of time. I do want to spend a little bit of time here. So, and again, we can go through this on Monday again. And this was the suggestion here for the Gmail account. So you'll arrive at the home Dan and Rosie and Marty, I'm assuming you're going to add whatever protocols you want to follow with the COVID stuff. Ask them if they want to record their own data. I think we may modify this based a little bit on, and again, I'll leave it to you guys to modify this Google Doc now, Dan and Marty and Rosie and Allie. But the way I've got it set up now is it's an either or, which is that either the farmer wants to record their own data or doesn't want to. And what I said here is that the farmer does want to record their own data, you wouldn't. I think what we've concluded now is that you guys should be recording the data regardless of whether they want to record their own data. So you're going to want to modify these steps a little bit. And essentially, yeah, B is always going to be the case. So this becomes decide if farmer will record data. And anyway, you can go through and finish editing this. So once you've got everything set up with the accounts and so forth, you create one site for the control and each of the treatment plots. I guess some of the yards have more than one treatment plot. So you might have two, you'll have at least 2 plots, and you may have 3. We've already gone through this.
Your head, and I think that's because some yards might have chosen more than one application, right?
Right, right. So that's then you might have 3 or 4.
You could have biochar and compost or whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
You bet.
When you say create a site, does that mean when you drop the pin and make the plot, or
yeah.
Just okay? But you're going to want one for each plot.
Yep, one for each plot.
For sites that have more than one application, generally, is there only one control? And then your 2 application plots?
There's some of each.
Okay, depending on location.
There's some that, there's a couple of people who did all 5 treatments or 4 treatments, and yeah, they used one control.
Okay.
Generally, when they did that many, so it's a mix.
Okay.
But yeah, I would just, for every plot, just to make it simple and at the risk of maybe a little bit of redundancy, although I don't think so based on what you said so far, I would just go ahead and make sure that you record for each plot. They just happen to be called sites rather than plots in LandPKS, which is why I said my sites.
Got it.
Okay. And again, here's your alternate. You can precisely locate your plot using the map function. And it sounds like you guys may want to do that. It'll certainly give you, should give you more precision. Then you are going to, and again, Dan or somebody's going to have to make it clear exactly what this looks like in terms of what you're calling these things. But the more standardized you can make it, the easier it's going to be down the road when you're sorting these data. And if there's a space between these different things or not a space, or however you do it, you can have spaces in the names, but make sure you're as consistent as possible and try to follow that. The plot name is the one thing that cannot be changed. And the reason is if you change it one place and then we try to sync back between the computer and the phone, it gets messed up. Okay, and so we no longer know which plot is which because you've changed it. So be pretty careful when you establish the name. You can always delete it and re-enter your data again. And that's really the easiest thing to do. If you start entering data and you're like, wait, I didn't want to call it that, just delete it, start over again. It won't take you but a minute or so. Would
it make sense to use an address? You guys probably already thought of this.
No, so we already have the plot names. So what you see there, that CCF, CCFC, ROS, BRI, that we need that to be consistent with the data that we already have.
Gotcha.
But then you still need a treatment code, which we didn't have there. So I guess you'll
right. We need to distinguish the test from the control, and yeah, for some people we're gonna have to distinguish actually which treatment it is. So we will figure that out, and I'll add that to this list.
Okay, so then you're going to do the record the land info data. So that's the description. And again, you can do a checklist for that. The soil health data. Dan, again, deferring to you on depth, but I'm just saying at least 20 centimeters, but as soon as you go any deeper than that, as you guys know, the call before you dig kicks in. And so I think just being super careful here, especially if you're going to be using those nice shovels that are pretty good at going deep. So again, deferring to you guys on that, how you want to handle that, record the soil health data. And then here's your optional, is that land cover data. So that vegetation stuff with the yardstick. And then and I guess I didn't even put this in here. Okay, and this was just, I'm going to go ahead and say optional. I should have put this here. Record optional, show landowner, so farmer, I guess you're calling them the farmers, how to record land management data. So I think that's, there we go. And then apply the treatments, reapply the treatments, I guess it would be reapply. Answer any questions. Thank you. And again, this is, I'm just the scientist with the app that's coming in. I'm counting on, I'm embarrassed that I'm the one that sort of started creating this document, because we have a professional volunteer coordinator and a whole bunch of teachers who like do this for their livelihoods. So I'm going to leave it here in your hands and assume that this is going to get a whole lot better with checklists and everything else. But any other questions for me about the app or anything?
I think we're good.
Okay, that was a long 2 hours. Thank you for sticking with me. I don't know about where you guys are sitting, but we don't have air conditioning, and I can tell summer has started here.
I live on Shanahan Ridge. I know how it is.
You do? Okay, so you're in one of these units up here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dan, if you guys are gonna sort of fine tune that checklist of sorts, once it's in some sort of usable shape, could we have it and try it out on our yards so that we can sort of troubleshoot ahead of time?
That's a great.
Yeah, what do you guys think about, I could just, so if you guys all have Gmail accounts, we can share these, maybe 2 Google Docs, protocol and the other document that lists the plots and has everybody's, has all the site IDs and what their treatments are. So you guys can go through them and yeah, like you're suggesting, Kim, why don't we vet it together between now and Monday, and then we'll finalize it and then we'll have a printout so that you can, something that you can take with you when we start doing that.
Does it matter when we make our new Gmail? Do you want to do like a theme or something, or like something so that we're all have similar?
Well, can't we do it under EcoCycle's G Suite so that you own it?
Right. I'm just saying.
There you go. That's brilliant. Yeah.
So what does that mean?
Documents.
Our schools, like,
We
you know how
already
you have your
do.
Christie at ecocycle.org?
Right, but he said we wanted to do a separate one. No? Okay.
No, so different. This is just to share, I'm just going to share this document with you.
Oh, right.
So you'll see it, you'll receive 2 Google Docs.
Mm-hmm.
So, so just so you can go through it.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I just meant when we are still making our own other Gmail, correct? Did I miss something?
I would suggest that, Dan, that you do that everybody create a new Gmail account and that it be thematic.
Yeah.
And if you want to do it under your G Suite, I haven't never done that before, but I think I've heard about how this works, and that could make a lot of sense. You're basically creating it within your own domain, and then you don't even have to worry about keeping track of those passwords because you basically have complete control, if I understand how that works.
Right, yeah. Our current ones have that, EcoCycle owns them, but you might want something, like you were saying, specific to this experiment, so that it's always, it could be passed to the next person if we're not doing it the next time around.
Like Carbon Farmer 1, 2,
Yeah.
3. something like that.
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so we'll work on that. That'll be new ground for me. So we got a little
Kate can help you.
bit.
Throw Kate Bailey under the bus. Or in the soil.
Well done. Well done. Okay, well, are there any other questions for Jeff?
There will be so many questions.
Before Monday.
Before Monday.
What do we need to, besides practicing, what else do we need to study up on?
We need to get our soil texture samples, right?
There you go.
Oh, by Monday. Oh, okay.
So we need to go to the office in the book room.
Yeah.
Okay.
And those are for us to look at so we can start to learn, and they're labeled so that we can learn what soil textures are called and all that, right?
Yeah, so on Monday, what you're going to want to have on Monday is either a little spray bottle or a bike water bottle, or go out to somebody's recycling, because I'm sure nobody here uses plastic bottles anymore. But go out to the recycling bin and find an old plastic bottle and punch a hole just a pinhole in the top, because you're going to be squirting little bits of water on soil in your hand. And so, and be prepared to, your hands are going to get muddy. And we're basically going to go through that. And if you want to play around with it ahead of time, those little bags of soil that you have are gold, because we are actually getting those, the sample those came from tested. So we'll actually know from a laboratory exactly what the texture is, a sandstone and clay content, which will allow you guys then to basically calibrate yourselves. Now, what we found is that actually just by following the key that's in the app, people do a pretty good job. They don't get exactly the right texture, but they get reasonably close, between sand and clay and a loam. But by calibrating yourself, you'll get even closer, and you'll basically have the sort of fundamental skill of a field soil scientist once you've learned how to do this. You'll be qualified to go out and determine how large of a septic system people need to install, because that's completely dependent on soil texture. There are lots of things that soil texture determines. How frequently to water your grass. It's all dependent on soil texture, and you're going to learn that skill. So, it's pretty cool. Okay. And the only other prep, I think I forwarded you guys, Dan, there's a PDF document that basically has all the information that I just went through in terms of sort of going through the app screens and so forth, and it has screenshots. And so you may want to forward that to folks. I think I sent that late last night.
Right.
Super late. And then I'm gonna, for the texture, I'm gonna send you one other document to share that we'll be referring to on Monday, and it would be good to have that sort of out, and you may want to print it out ahead of time. Actually, it's just 1 or 2 pages, I think. It's not more than 2 pages. So I will send that to you guys. And that's it. I mean, there's lots, you can go to the website. There's lots of other reading. We've written academic articles on how LandPKS can be used for climate change and for land use planning and for all these other things. But in terms of the practical aspects of what we're doing, the best thing is just to mess around with play around with it and look at some of the other screens. There's a screen that shows you what I should have shown you that. It'll take 2 more seconds. So if you go on the report, to land info, now that I've entered some data in there, it's actually telling you what the available water holding capacity is. And if you click on that, it tells you what it is, and it's how much water the soil will hold. And it depends on your texture, how much sandstone and clay, as I indicated earlier, but it also depends on your organic matter content. So this is actually kind of cool. You can show the landowners, hey, as we increase carbon in the soil, organic matter, we increase the amount of water that the soil will hold, which means you don't have to irrigate as often. It also increases the infiltration rate, so the water will soak in faster, and so forth. And you just kind of play around with that little radio button. So just more little features. There's various things like that scattered throughout the app.
Cool. Well,
oh, and I just realized I didn't share my screen. That was worthless. Anyway, land info on the report, water holding capacity and infiltration capacity, and then you move the little organic matter thing to see what happens. Okay, that's it. Go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
So we'll call that good until Monday. Unless there's any other last minute questions. Jeff, thank you. That's awesome. Very helpful. So I'll share these Google documents with you shortly. And Jeff, I'll include you so that you have everybody's email address so we can all communicate. Just quickly, there are, so right now we're assembling everybody's treatments that are going to start to go out next week. So if you have, if you need more hours this week for our loan, I hope you guys have some sense of it yourselves. Let me know if you don't. But we have a little bit of work to do this week. So Allie is assembling these things. So you, let's see, let me just drop my cell phone number in here. Or let's see, I'll give you my cell phone number. And so you can just, let me know if you're available for this, and you have hours for this week, and I will hook you up with Allie or get you oriented for what needs to happen. Okay.
And speaking of contact, I believe in answering every email. I'm also, like probably everybody else here, prone to overcommitment. If I don't respond to an email and it's a really important urgent email, just send it again, or reach out to me. I can share my phone as well. But it helps because I'm literally working with thousands of people around the world at this point. If you can provide a little bit of context, like, hi, this is Tina at EcoCycle, or you know, what the context is, because I won't necessarily remember, and I'm also really bad with faces and names, which just makes the fact that I work with thousands of people around the world worse. I was the last kid in my kindergarten to learn my phone number and my address, the last kid, which tells you something about my memory. Hasn't gone any better. So anyway, yeah, anything you can do to, if I don't respond, it's not because I don't care, it's just I'm juggling a few things.
So I have a question about Monday, Dan. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to rush, but our landlord's about to come to show the house. So we gotta go in just a second. But for Monday, Dan, is there the capability to, are we doing this at EcoCycle or within our own homes, this soil texture meeting?
Yeah, you're doing it at home, or I mean, you're certainly welcome to do it here, Haley. I may well be here. So yeah, wherever.
Okay.
And Haley, if you're in Shanahan, you can just come over and do it on our deck.
Yeah, I would
and just
love
socially
to.
distance.
However, I'm supposed to work my other job on Monday, so I may ask to leave early to get to this meeting, or if there is the capability of having it recorded,
It is, yeah, I
Awesome.
figured out the recording problem. So
Yay!
recorded, the other one will be recorded too.
Great.
But
Thank you
so-
so much.
If you can make it Haley, the next one is going to be much more experiential, and the recording probably won't work as well. If you can't, you can't. But it's definitely sort of, you're going to be literally doing the texture, and you're going to go, Jeff, mine feels like this, but I'm not getting the right answer. What's going on?
Okay. Yeah, I will speak with unfortunately, it's a job that I just took. I feel a little
Yeah.
weird about leaving early on the second day of work, but I will, he's pretty flexible, so I will ask him if that's all right for just this one time. But thank you, Jeff. We've got to leave because we got pets in the house that aren't supposed to be here. So
Okay.
bye. Thank you.
Good. Take care.
Haley.
So long.
Jeff, you still need 2 sets of soil samples, is that right?
Yes, please. And I'm happy to bike down and pick them up if that's where you've got them. You said something about some room or whatever, but yeah, I can just let me know hours. Friday would be easier given my schedule, but yeah, I can just pick up a couple.
You know, I could hit you on the way home tonight.
Okay. Or if Haley is picking them up, then she says something about, I'm not quite sure I get it. She lives in Shanahan, but selling the house. Anyway,
Yeah, not for long. She's moving to Westminster, I think. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but she lives right near Fairview, like right a couple blocks from the high school.
Yeah, she's
So like she's like right there.
right there. Okay. Yeah. So that's, yeah, literally.
And I'll be in and out of the office too, and I'm happy to help any way I can too. Not everybody goes into the office right now, but I will be. So Dan, if you want me to do anything, let me know.
Yeah.
To help
Yeah.
get the.
If I don't get them from you by Friday, I will come down and get them.
Okay.
And then Dan, I missed for hours. Did you say you wanted us to call or text? My Dan ran into our room and jumped on the bed with the dog, so I got slightly distracted. Right as you were making that statement.
Text me if you have hours this week. Just give me a text.
Cool. Yeah, just got distracted right as you were making that statement.
And I'm just clarifying, that's if we don't have something to do to fill up our 30 hours, correct? Or whether
Yeah,
I could work more, but I don't want to.
I mean, there's stuff to do. So if Cinder told you use your vacation hours and you don't want to use your vacation hours, text me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Sounds good.
I'll be texting you.
Okay.
Okay. Awesome.
I'll drop these off as soon as they deliver the lumber. So,
Okay.
or maybe early in the morning before if I find out that it's an afternoon. So,
Okay. Great. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you,
All right.
guys. This was awesome.
Yeah. It's going to be fun.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks all.
It is great. All right.
And
See ya.
Nice
Bye.
to meet you.
End recording.